Here's an easy rule to follow for texting. If you're feeling needy, wait until you've stopped feeling needy before you message first. Otherwise, it's going to impact the energy that you send to them, also in terms of body language, what words you choose, etc. And it's likely to make you feel even worse the second that they don't seem to be responding as fast as you want them to. For social skills tips, follow me. Quick tip for conversations. If you've done a decent amount of traveling, make a list of places where you've been and you can show it to people to create conversation. In my opinion, traveling is overall the best topic out of any conversation topic. I made a previous video on this in my conversation playlist. Also, it makes you look good if you've done a lot of traveling. If you want to learn social skills, follow me and see my best tips here. Quick tip for conversations. If you've done a decent amount of traveling, make a list of places where you've been and you can show it to people to create conversation. In my opinion, traveling is overall the best topic out of any conversation topic. I made a previous video on this in my conversation playlist. Also, it makes you look good if you've done a lot of traveling. If you want to learn social skills, follow me and see my best tips here. An interesting thing you can do that will help you socially and probably develop as a person too. Once every year or so, go through all of your old photos on your phone. You're basically guaranteed to find things that are really easy to send to reinitiate conversations with people from the past. Or something that was really funny that you can remind people of, or something similar. You're also likely to realise things about yourself, how you used to be, and where you might want to go forwards. This tends to be a really good exercise, but I'd probably not recommend it if you had something traumatic happen that you haven't got over yet. If you want to support my aim to help birth social skills, like and comment. Ideally, you want your text messages to look as short as possible in most situations. So have a think about how you can reword it to make it shorter, use symbols instead of characters, and use emojis in place of words. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. Specific examples to make your conversations flow easier. If you say you like traveling, include a place where you went traveling. If you say you did some classes at school earlier, include an example of one of the classes you did. It's generally easier for people to focus on and talk about a specific example than a vague general topic. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. Not doing anything time after time when someone does something you don't like is actually a mean thing to do to them. You're not making it clear what your boundaries are or what you do or do not like, which makes it likely that they're going to bother you and not realise that they're doing it. This almost definitely means that you're going to end up acting negatively towards them, whether it's through body language or through actions or something else. Then they're going to think that you're doing it for no reason. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. Here's a simple way you can ask if you're still meeting without either looking needy or making them reconsider if they want to meet. Instead of asking, hey, are we still on? Say, I'm going to be 5 minutes late later because I'm doing whatever just before. This way you confirm you're still meeting and no one's going to cancel for 5 minutes. Anytime you ask someone whether they still want to do something, you potentially make them reconsider it, including meeting. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. Here's something simple you can do by text if someone you know is having a hard time. Do you have some kind of video, meme, or picture that you guys found funny ages ago but now you've forgotten about? If so, send them it. One thing that tends to work well also is to bombard them with loads of funny memes. I'd also recommend to keep a folder on your phone or an album that is a collection of funny memes that you found for purposes like this and others. If you want to see my best tips for social skills, go here. Here's a way you can remind someone to do something by text without seeming pushy at all. Simply wait a long time to send the message that ends the conversation. So for example, you say, hey, can you send me the pictures you took from yesterday? They say, yeah, sure, I will. At that point, wait for quite a long time before you say something like, okay, cool, thanks, by message. And that way, if loads of time has passed since the conversation, so if they forgot, you remind them, but without having to say, hey, by the way, can you please remember? If you want to learn social skills, follow me. Here's a super overpowered conversation tip for text conversations, especially where you don't know the person, like online dating. When you're saying something to them, or if you're responding to a question they've asked you, give a few points in your comment or response, and then 2 questions, ideally non-yes-no questions, which I'll just explain briefly what they are here. One of 2 things will start happening. Either they'll give short responses, possibly only answer one of the questions, in which case this didn't work, and just continue as normal, or your conversation can start to grow and grow and grow until you're sending essays to each other and the messages get massive and it starts to become a really obvious thing to do next, to have a call or meet. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. If you want to see my best tips, go here. I'm seeing tons of memes floating around about cutting people off, and I've literally not seen one on fixing relationships, how to set boundaries in a healthy way, or forgiveness. In my opinion, this culture where it's cool and trendy to cut people off is toxic and bad for humanity. Obviously, I'm not saying to never cut someone off, but I think the world will be a much better place if people are given quite a few chances to fix things or be forgiven. There's already tons of unnecessary isolation and segregation in our society, and we have this throwaway culture which is now extending to actual people. So in my opinion, you should make sure to also value preventing problems and fixing problems when they do occur in any friendships and relationships that you have, as well as cutting people off when it's necessary. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. How people end up not liking each other for no reason. A says something B doesn't like, but they pretend it's okay. Then B is socially negative to A, and A thinks there's no reason. Both think the other person's the aggressor, and now you hate each other for no reason. Instead, ask why they did it and say that you didn't like it. You learn boundaries and have positive interactions, making Earth happier. If you want to learn social skills, follow me. If you're comparing yourself to other people, then your confidence becomes unstable because it's based on something that's outside of you. In my opinion, most people compare themselves to other people way too much, and it should be done almost never. The only person you should really compare yourself to, in my opinion, is your old self. And even better than that, I'd only compare yourself to the effort that you used to put in, rather than the actual result, as that can also change based on something that's outside of your control. If you can discipline yourself to do this, you'll have much more stable confidence and happiness. Plus, you'll probably get the results that you want as well, because we tend to do better when we're motivated by intrinsic things rather than extrinsic stuff. If you want to see my very best social skills tips, go here. A key phrase to use that will massively increase your success rate if you're asking someone out. So this is helpful mostly if you're asking someone out on a first date, as a first meeting for a friend, or on a business consultation, but also other times too. If I propose my own times, for example, I say, are you free Tuesday? They say no. Then I say, are you free Wednesday? They say no, etc., etc. Then now it starts to look like I'm dropping all of my plans for them, or that I'm not doing anything important, which can be off-putting in these situations. Instead of that, use this phrase to massively increase your success. Ask, when are you free? First, then more than likely they're going to give you some of their own times, and then you can pick one that also suits you, and we avoid having this potential trap that I just mentioned. Make people more likely to respond to your first message if you exchange contact details of a stranger with this one simple tip. Don't leave straight after you get their contact details, because it can come across like you just wanted to get their contact details and that's it. Try to stay for a bit longer after you got their contact details. Then you'll end up with more people responding out of, say, 100 times that you do this.
Sex, baby, let's talk about you and me.
Quick social skills tip. Ideally, avoid negative topics. Topics that are either generally seen as negative or will be negative to the person or people that you're talking to. Unless you think you can build loads of common ground by having a similar opinion on them, or unless you feel like it's really important to bring up for some reason, minimize time spent on them, because otherwise you're likely going to make the conversation result in negative emotions, which will then be associated with you and make everyone feel not as good. Cheer up someone you know who's having a bad time by sending them a video or a photo of something that they find really funny, but they've probably forgotten about from the past. Follow me if you want to learn social skills. Be in the habit of having more than one way of contacting your friends. For example, if you have a friend who only uses their phone number, doesn't use social media, and you only have their phone number, and they lose their phone, that might mean that you lose your friend just because they lost their phone, which would be sad. So if they don't use social media, make sure to get their email address or physical address or something like that at some point, just in case. April Fool's Day has the opportunity for this social hack. Propose something to someone that you feel like might be a risky move. Say, for example, asking a friend out on a date. If the response isn't how you want, April Fools! End up with twice as many friends and expand your social circle with this tip. Make a list of people where you want to see them and you believe that they still want to see you, and then write a number next to them of how many times you intend to see them within a year, and then try and cycle through the list and keep in contact with these people. Most people end up losing touch with people once a situation has changed. So this will probably include people from old jobs that you had, or your school, or an area that you moved away from, and extended family members like cousins and stuff. If you do this, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to end up with twice as many friends within 6 months. Don't feel bad if you're the one initiating contact, because it's not natural for humans to use technology to communicate, and most people aren't going to make that effort. That doesn't mean they're a bad friend, so don't feel bitter about it. I'm happy being the person that makes more effort, and ends up making good relationships. Here's a cheat you can do when you're texting someone. When you give a voice note, you get unlimited attempts of doing the voice note, but the other person probably won't perceive it that way. So you can keep redoing the voice note until it's perfect and sounds exactly how you like, and then send it, and people often sort of pass that off as that was your first attempt. Bit cheeky, bit of a cheat, but it can be really effective, especially if you want to say some kind of pitch and persuade someone to do something like that. Manage your emotions better and do better in social situations with this one simple tip. If you're not sure if something was meant in a positive way or a negative way towards you, assume that it was meant in a positive way and react accordingly. This will help you manage your emotions. Remember, in my opinion, managing your emotions is the most important thing in social skills because it always leaks out somehow. You can't control it completely. And secondly, sometimes people don't know which one they meant themselves, or they kind of meant both. So by responding to it as if it was positive sets the frame that it was a positive communication towards you. Make it more likely someone will give you their contact details by lowering barriers for entry. So first of all, hand them your phone, hand them with everything open and the area selected where they need to type in either their name on social media or their number or something like that. This also applies to other areas of any kind of persuasion that you're trying to do. People will be more likely to agree to exchange contact details after you talk to them with this one simple tip. All we do is we have our phone in our hand before we ask for contact details. So if I'm thinking of asking for someone's contact details, I first get my phone out, continue the conversation for a minute at least, and then ask their contact details. This is a sales technique because if people see the product before they're asked to buy into it, they're more likely to say yes to it. Do you forget to take photos while you're out and wish that you'd taken them after? If so, here's a simple tip that I use to remember. I created a group chat with just one person, but could be multiple, and the only aim of the group chat was just once a day we'd post a picture of ourselves. If we're not doing anything interesting, it'd just be a boring selfie, but if we were doing something interesting, we'd take a picture of that, and it made me remember more to take pictures of good things that are happening during my day. Look less needy or overwhelming in text messages with this simple tip. All we do is if we end up having a big message we want to send to someone, try to look for ways to shorten the amount of characters in the message. So take away words that aren't necessary, rephrase things so the sentences are shorter. That way, when the person sees the message after you sent it, it's not going to be as big and they're less likely to think, whoa, that's too much. Here's a basic plan of how to start getting contact details if you go out at night and you want to get people's contact details, or if you're on a holiday or something and you're there to meet new people, or if you're on a networking event, something like that. So one, get yourself into a good mood. So I made a video before about this. If you want to backtrack, it goes into way more detail. Basically speak to the people you're going with. If you're going with people, do other things to help get you in a good mood. Second thing is try to speak to somebody you don't know early on. Otherwise you can get really stuck talking to the people that you're there with, which if that's not what you want to do, obviously isn't ideal. And be happy and ready for that first situation to not go that well, be a bit awkward, etc., etc. It's more for you to gain momentum quickly. And then a basic way to do things is that you start a conversation with someone, find a topic that you both seem to want to talk about, then start to show that you're of value to remain in contact with, then propose exchanging contact details. If they say yes, you can choose to keep speaking to them if you want to. Here's something you can do with texting to improve your conversations. It also helps with social media a bit. I went through the pros and cons of social media in another video. I tend to focus more on real life interactions, but obviously this is a big part of communication. So what you want to do is try to organize your photos so that you can access them faster. So for example, you might have a photo that's like of funny memes. You might have a photo album that's of pictures of you that are good, etc. So then you can react quickly if a texting conversation is quicker, and you just save yourself more time anyway. Another thing you can do is on your social media, if you use social media, obviously you're going to be using TikTok, but I mean like other social media also, is follow some good pages with memes and stuff that are just generally good, and some that might be specific to a certain social circle you're in. So if you're a physics teacher, then physics memes, for example. That way you'll see something come up, you can save them, if one that's relevant to someone, you can tag them, etc. It's more likely that way. Just organizing your photos. Here's a way you can make it so that the contact details you get when you're out end up flaking less often. So they end up being one that responds and you end up meeting or whatever your intended aim was. So with different communication channels, so for example, we've got Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, just as some examples. Some of them it's better if I do the action. Some of them it's better if the other person does the action. So for example, if we take WhatsApp, you have to take their phone number. So if I take the phone number, I've got the phone number and I can message them. If I give them my number, then that means that I'm relying on them messaging me. And by the time they get home, I've changed their mind, forgot, lost my number or something like that. With Facebook, for example, it's the other way around and Instagram. So I have to add them on Facebook and then they have to accept me. So it's better that way round. If the other person adds you, then you can make sure that you remember. Whereas if you add them, they might end up changing their minds, forgetting, it gets lost in all the other things, etc., etc. So bear that in mind. Here are the good and the bad points of social media, in my opinion. I think it's good to be aware of these so you can think about how you're using it. So the good points are that we can communicate with tons of people at once. We can kind of hack Dunbar's number, if you want to look that up, and have a really big social circle in a sense of an online following, although it's not really the same as an in-person social circle. We can keep in touch with people for way longer. People will remember you generally for way longer on social media. So it basically allows us to have more friends and more connections, but it tends to make those connections less deep on average. So the bad things are obviously if you're spending too much time on it, you're wasting your time. If you're replacing it for real life social interactions, that's really bad in my opinion. And if you're comparing yourself to other people, I'd recommend sort of, if you can, like hiding them, etc. Maybe like unfollowing them, something like that. So those are the good and the bad sides. So if you can try to use social media a bit more in a good way. Here's my idea for what your aim should be when you're speaking to new people for the purposes of 1, overcoming nervousness, and 2, getting better results from the interactions that you have. So my goal when I speak to new people is that I just attempt to make their day better. Anything past that is either a secondary goal or a bonus. The reason for that is if you go into a situation and you aim to get someone's number, persuade them of something, make some kind of impression, then you're more likely to work yourself up, put yourself under pressure, be nervous, and perhaps ultimately not do it. If I asked you to do 5 push-ups right now in one scenario and I asked you to do 15 in another, there's going to be more people who do 5. And then after we've done 5, we can say, let's do another 5. So once you've attempted to make their day better, it's a nice stepping stone onto the next thing. You're also doing a good thing for the world, and it means that that goal is ultimately under your control. No one can take that away from you because all it requires is your intention. If your goal is to get someone's number, then you're putting the power in their hands, whereas attempt to make their day better. How to pick what to do for a first meeting. So this might be a first date, it might be the first meeting of you and a friend, and this also includes groups of people as well. So the short answer is that you want it to be something where you and the other person are talking only. That's if you don't feel like there's going to be awkward silences. If you do feel like there's going to be awkward silences, you might want a bit of a distraction. So somewhere where it's just you and the other person talking only. Examples of that may include a bar, or if you don't drink, then a coffee shop. If it's sunny, then the park. There's nothing to do other than you two interacting. And that way, the most percentage of your time is spent with you two talking. If you feel like you might have trouble between you talking and holding a conversation, then I'd recommend that you have a slight distraction. So there's some sports on in the corner, there's some live music playing, something like that. Things like going to a cinema, especially, or other activities, might include sports or whatever. For a first meeting, I feel like are not as good because there's going to be a lower total amount of time for you two connecting, which is really important for. Here's a few really good topics to introduce early on in your conversation if you're someone who runs out of things to say sometimes or you want to make your conversation grow. The best one, in my opinion, is places. So you'll find that lots of people have instinctually learned to ask, where are you from, early on in conversations. It's because the topic of places, whether that's a country or a town or even this room I'm in, tends to have a high quantity of relevant subjects, and they tend to be quite interesting, funny, etc., lead to stories, things like that. I've never found anyone who doesn't like talking about traveling. Even people who don't want to go traveling like talking about it. So asking about traveling or where are you from early on tends to make the conversation grow quite easily. Music and movies also tend to be good topics in a similar way, but places I found to be the best one. If you think of something else to say first, I'd usually recommend that you do that first, because then you can go back to these if you can't think of something later, rather than using something straight away that you could bank for later on. Here's a good phrase to use if someone seems to be misinterpreting or trying to twist a story or some event that happened. For example, there was a conversation that happened earlier and now you're explaining it to a new person, and one person explains it
more of a joke, and another person explains the same event as purposely insulting. A lot of the time this can be done in subtle ways, which are kind of hard to point out, that they are seemingly steering the description away from the truth. So a phrase that counters this is, why are you trying to frame it as this? And then you give some of your own points, because this and this and this happened. This kind of cheats the situation because it allows you to point out the whole overall vibe of their description rather than one point they made or one sentence the way they worded it. Then if they deny that they're framing it that way, you can say, well, I guess that means that you agree with what I'm saying, which is this, this, this. And if they claim they're not doing that either, then you can say to them, well, what way are you describing it then? If they're purposely trying to be misleading, they're likely to be pretty stuck at that point. But always assume that they're not, unless you have quite close to conclusive evidence that they are. That way you avoid unnecessarily generating hostile voice tone, body language, and energy. If you would frame my videos as something that helps you, I would highly recommend that you frame the free trial session as something that you should probably try, because it'll be way more helpful to you than the videos. See more info here. Here's a simple way to potentially spot if someone's lying. If they're telling a story and you think the story might be a lie, ask a question about a very insignificant detail of the story. For example, if a story that you think is made up is about people having a fight outside, you could ask what kind of clothes they're wearing or what the weather was like at the time. Someone who's referencing a memory tends to complete that process way faster than someone who's making up something new. So if they seem to be taking an unusually long time to remember that detail, or especially if they're showing signs of panicking, there's some evidence there that they're not being completely truthful. If you think my videos are helpful for you, there's a pretty close to 100% chance you'll find a free trial session of our one-to-one social skills coaching much more helpful than these. Check this out for more information. Here's how to attempt to correct someone's behavior that you don't like, but at the same time reduce the hostile energy and negative emotions. Instead of saying, I don't like it when, or can you stop it when, something, say, I'd like it if, and then try to say the opposite positive thing. For example, instead of saying, I don't like it when you're on your phone when we're talking, you might say, I'd really appreciate it if you could concentrate on the conversation a bit more. If you think in your mind like this as well, you'll have more positive emotions. If you find my videos helpful, you'll definitely find a free trial session of our one-to-one social skills coaching way more helpful, as it will be tailored to you and longer. So to see more information, check this out.